Hello, this is Dustin with Conley Insulation, and we are going to show you the basics of installing insulation. Make sure you have all your PPE, hand protection, eye protection, so on and so forth. Thank you. When starting insulation, you always start with your fittings first. You make sure that they line up with your welds. Then secure your fitting with tape. Make sure you always go at least one complete circumference. Dependent on the size of the 90, you may need more or less wraps. Once your fittings are installed, cut your straight lengths. Measure your straight lengths. If you lock your tape measure at the length and run it along the side of your insulation, and rotate it all the way around, it will leave a mark on your insulation so you can have a true straight cut. The more strokes you use, the cleaner your cut will be. Let your knife do the cutting. Do not force it. Same as the fitting before. Simply wrap it around the pipe. Install tape. Same as before, at least once around. And cut. In the event that you have any obstructions, such as shoes or supports, simply cut out the area of the insulation you do not need. In this example, imagine that there's a small pipe protruding from this. If you put it on and it's still not able to close, you must remove it and remove more insulation material until it closes properly. The cladding becomes pre-rolled. Usually the inside lip is curled tighter, so once you place it on the piping, that extra curve applies pressure to the outside so that the cladding will lay down nice and flat. When cladding, watershed is very important, otherwise any condensation or water will get inside, damage your insulation. So you must do it systematically. You start at the bottom, which will mean the 90 will be next, which will cover up, so water will shed down, and same on your horizontal. It will cover over top of the 90 to prevent water damage. Very similar to the insulation, you will measure your pieces. And same as the insulation. Set your tape measure to your distance you need. Roll it along the edge. And only apply slight pressure. It does not take much to mark the metal. Once your line is marked all the way around the edge, utilize the offsets we've provided. The offsets are the ones with the additional lip. This is so that the metal passing by as you're cutting the material does not catch on your hand and provide cuts, and allows you to make long, straight cuts. While cutting, do not close the snips all of the way. If you do, you will create notches and fish hooks. The more smaller cuts you make, the finer and straighter your cuts will be. Very similar to the insulation, simply wraps around. Oh, no, like that. The pre-made fab straps are installed in this fashion. The tail goes through the top and out. In installing bands, simply wrap them around, slide through, tighten, then adjust your metal to the point that you want it to rest. Your band should stay in line with your lap. I'm going to attempt to do this looking over the pipe, which is not very conducive. Put your bands and your work in front of you. It is much simpler. Once your band is around the cladding, to install the tighteners sometimes is found difficult. When installing, you do a sweeping motion, starting with the front of the tool, sweeping in past the dogs. Once you have your tighteners in place, make sure your band is sitting very straight. If your dog is loose, simply bend the band and tighten. Do not over tighten, just tighten till you feel resistance. Bend your band completely forward and out of the way, which will lock it in place. Very similar to once you are putting the tighteners on to remove, you release the strap, slide forward and out at the same time. Installing your 90, simply place over your insulation. Like so. When overlapping on the back of your 90, make sure your bottom remains square to itself. Slide in the minimal amount, approximately 1/4 to 1/2 inch overlapping. The larger the 90, the more lap you will need. The most important things is to make sure that your bottom line is level and your back center line is running down the absolute center of your 90. If this is twisted, your 90 will come out incorrectly and it'll create gaps and puckering on your seams. On the throat of your 90, make sure that it laps in the same direction as your heel. So with this particular one, the right hand side is underneath in the throat as well as in the heel. The left hand side is over top. As I stated before, I'm looking to make sure that my heel is centered and my bottom is level with the minimal lap that I spoke of before. Screw placement on your 90s is very important. From the two outside ribs, you create an imaginary line that I'm going to put in with felt marker. With the same angle, and that is where your screw placement will be from both sides. When placing bands on 90s, you will always want your clip to be on the overlap side and in the throat. You'll install one band on the bottom, one on the top. You will always start with your bottom band. At this point, readjust if anything is out of square. Go slowly, make sure it lays down. Sometimes it requires a little tap to make it lay down. The top band needs to be tightened the same as the bottom. Most times the one band behind will actually loosen off. You will have to back tighten, which simply means you attach to that band again, give her a little tighten. Same thing with your band below. Once both bands are tightened down, you will place screws on your bottom edge, one close to the bottom, one at the heel close to the bottom, and then one through the center of the throat. Once these 3 screws are installed, you may remove the bands and the 90 will stay in place. Before you install the screws, make sure it's laying down nicely everywhere before the final screw is in place. If there's any obstructions, you need to apply a cutout to your cladder. When it comes to all cutouts, regardless of the method that you use, the 2 measurements that are most important is to find the center of your cutout. By that I mean the distance from your lap to center of the cutout and the distance from the edge of your metal to the center cutout. Always allow for lap. There should be 2 inches of side lap from one piece to the next piece to prevent watershed and also complete the weatherproof it jacketing. There's 3 main methods of doing that. The first, of course, if it is just a protrusion that you can come over top of, very simply, you just cut out the metal and it will just fit over top. If there is a pipe or something that extends past that you cannot cut out for, the second method is to either create a slit and slide in sideways, or create a slit up, slide in this way, or you can actually rotate it, your lap, to the cutout and put the cutout where your lap is. This third method is not always recommended. Sometimes it is easier, but you can have issues with watershed when you do this. To simply wrap the cladding around the insulation will give you the right circumference measurement and simply draw on your cutout. This one is a circle, kind of crudely drawn just by hand. You can use the compass that we've included or simply measure it out. Then simply cut out along your markings and that method is complete. Method number 2, same as I've stated before, find the center of your cutout, another circle possibly, or if it's a square, but find the center of your cutout. With this one, draw a line all the way down to your lap. You cut out the circle. You bend the ears up, run it past the cutout, put them back down, and where the lap is, you install a screw on either side so the ears do not lift up. The final method, which I prefer the most, is the cut in sideways. Same as before, find the center of your cutout, draw your cutout itself, circle again, possibly a square, so on and so forth, but then create a slit to the side. So you want the edge of your cutout plus 2 inches of metal, then the slit. Lift the ears, slide it in sideways, put the ears back down. The next piece of metal will be installed right up against your cutout so you have a nice smooth finish and it looks like one piece of metal. Even with cutouts, the way of applying the bands and so on and so forth are always the same. You may have to have shorter pieces due to cutouts or obstructions, but our band placement, you always put one band on the edge of your metal, then 11.5 inches over, 11.5 inches over. Your band placement can be moved slightly because of cutouts or obstructions. The biggest part is to make sure that they look even and not out of place. When installing over top of the 90, you want it to come far enough, but never go on top of the ribs of the 90 itself. If this was an actual pipe, you would want to space them the 12 inches apart, as I've mentioned. To make your life simpler, place all your bands on the pipe before you start tightening any of them. This way you have your hands free to work with the material instead of trying to fumble with additional bands. You always want to start with the band second from your edge. So this would be your edge, this would be your second band. If you hold tension on your tighteners, not much, and give it a little bit of a roll, that will help you keep your band straight. Same as before, tighten until you feel tension. Bend your band tail all the way up to lock it in place. The band at your edge, some people put it right on the edge, but I find after a while that band will slip off and you'll get loosening over time. I like to keep mine in about 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit more. Then you skip over top, go to your last one. As same with the 90, as you can see, the middle band loosens off. Back tighten it. So all your bands, when dealing with horizontal, you want your lap anywhere from 2 to 4 o'clock. I prefer to keep mine around 3 o'clock, but anywhere between 2 and 4 is acceptable. When cutting off bands, snips as close to the ears as possible, one clean cut. To finish off, take the snips, pinch the bottom. You can either press them over or actually just hit them over with a hammer or your tool. Another method some people use is push it in, use a blunt object, and just push. If you use the pushing method, be very careful. If it slips, you can hurt yourself very easily. Okay, cut. When performing cutouts, if it is just a protrusion that you do not need to provide a slit or anything else to get to the edge, simply grab your snips, press down hard, wiggle back and forth, and it'll penetrate. Start with little snips. Create basically a corkscrew so you have room to work with, and once you're to your line, little snips. Same with the side cutout, instead of having to penetrate your metal, simply slice. Smaller the cuts, nicer your finish. Nice clean finish. Bend on, back down, next piece of metal. Once you have completed, all your bands are snipped, all your proper screws are in place. Apply silicone on the heels of your 90s and around any cutouts that you have so we don't have any water penetrating into our insulation. Thank you from Connolly Insulation for watching this training video on the basics of installing insulation. I hope you found this very helpful. Thank you and have a good day.